Believe it or not, but state legislators, they'll be back in a handful of weeks. Late October, fall veto session begins. And while earlier this summer it was unclear if they were going to have any vetoes to deal with, Governor J.B. Pritzker has issued 2 hard vetoes and 3 amendatory vetoes. And it looks like there could possibly be more. Who knows? He's got a few more bills to act on. But the time for legislators to come back and deal with vetoes is on the way. So what are some Republicans and Democrats predicting could happen at fall veto session? I connected with several at the Illinois State Fair for Governor's Day and Republican Day. Senate's Minority Leader John Curran, he lays out his thoughts on veto session and what could happen. And you got, again, vetoes dealing with the small nuclear reactors, or at least lifting a nuclear reactor moratorium in the state of Illinois. You've also got a measure that the governor vetoed allowing for Ameren, Illinois to have right of first refusal for high-powered transmission line construction in Illinois, so 2 hard vetoes there. You also had a 3rd hard veto, I believe, actually, that even the sponsor of the legislation said, oh, sorry, we messed up, go ahead and veto that thing. But several of the vetoes were amendatory vetoes dealing with private-public partnerships and contracting, dealing with schools and whether they should go through the State Board of Education for dealing with food for certain religious individuals and contracting to get that food. So several things, amendatory vetoes. If you're not familiar with how the process works, ultimately, the legislature passes a law and passes it on to the governor. The governor acts on it, either vetoes or amendatory vetoes, and then the legislature has X number of days to either agree with the veto and let it stand, or to override the veto, or to agree with the amendatory veto language or override that amendatory veto. So that's what's going to happen come late October when lawmakers head back to Springfield. But Senate Minority Leader John Curran, again, he lays out some of his thoughts about where they're at right now with these particular vetoes and whether or not Democrats in the supermajority are going to move forward with those.
Well, we only have one that's a Senate bill, and that's Senator Resin's bill lifting the moratorium on new nuclear facilities. So she's filed her motion to override. I expect that to come forward in the Senate. It was veto-proof vote the first time. We're going to continue to, we think it's good policy for Illinois, energy independence and lower cost energy. So, we're going to push for an override. The rest of them are in the House. We're going to see what happens in the House.
And on that measure about the Ameren bill, that was a House bill, and Curran, he sounds off on that.
I think if the votes aren't there on an override, that would be the next move. The governor had ample opportunity to weigh in as that bill was being ushered through the General Assembly. The amendment in the House was in direct response to concerns expressed by the governor. So this really came out of left field for everyone.
So he's talking about the nuclear moratorium being lifted. But you also had an Ameren bill that was vetoed. Here's Jay Hoffman.
Well, I think that as time plays out, we'll see and try and discuss with the governor's office whether or not we can do some trailer bills that would clarify some of their objections. I personally believe that we should move forward with ensuring that small nuclear moves forward. We should also accept the amendatory veto on the public-private partnerships so we can move forward with some of the biggest construction jobs we're going to be facing here in Illinois. So as we move forward and get closer to the veto session, I think we'll be sitting down with the governor's office to try and determine a course of action.
So what happens, though, with the Democrats that have the supermajority? House Minority Leader Tony McCombie reacts.
Well, I hope that the House and Senate Democrats push back on those vetoes. They brought those bills forward. They were strong bipartisan bills. So I hope that the Democrats are putting pressure on the administration to bring those forward, and let's call them for a vote.
What do you think it says if they don't?
Well, I think they go back on their word with their own members.
So again, some of the politics around fall veto session and what could possibly happen with vetoes on energy bills and more. It'll be interesting. We'll definitely be covering that, and I'll be out there on the ground getting questions in and reporting out to you. And you can follow me anywhere. Just search Bishop On Air on X, formerly known as Twitter, or on Facebook. You can sound off there as well. But it's not just vetoes they could deal with. There could also be supplemental appropriations, meaning more of your tax dollars being appropriated. So we'll hear from John Curran about that. We'll hear from House Assistant Majority Leader Jay Hoffman about that. So that's coming back here with Springfield's Morning News on WMA. Talking about what to expect for fall veto session, which is the last month of October. Then I think they take a week off and come back the second week of November. It's only 6 days they have scheduled, but fall sessions typically when they take up vetoes from the governor. And earlier this summer, it was unclear what kind of vetoes they would have to deal with, but now we know they've got at least 3 hard vetoes. One of them's not really gonna anything happen with. I think even the sponsor of that bill said, "Nah, go ahead and veto it, Governor." But 2 deal with energy. 1 would lift the moratorium on new nuclear power plants. The governor saying he wanted to focus on small module reactors, and he says that this bill didn't do that. While you've got some people saying that's the definition of nuclear reactors now. So it'd be interesting to see what happens with that bill. Another bill that the governor vetoed deals with Ameren and allowing them to have right of first refusal for constructing new transmission lines. And the concern there was from the governor that it could lead to a monopoly of sorts and increase the overall cost for residents in the state of Illinois when it comes to energy. Interesting that he makes that an issue, but didn't make that an issue when he wanted to completely change the state's energy infrastructure to more, quote, renewable energy like solar and wind. After that was passed, and even the Biden administration making some things happen on a federal level, we've seen energy costs just go through the roof. So the vetoes and the amendatory vetoes, obviously that's going to be a focus for fall veto session. But vetoes aren't the only things that they can do when they come back into session. They could pass anything they wanted to. They could do trailer bills to clarify what they meant to do with the bills the governor vetoed. They could also vote to spend more of your tax dollars, and that would be through what's called a supplemental appropriation. Happens all the time. We saw a supplemental appropriation earlier this year to help pay down the unemployment debt, and we saw supplemental appropriation. It's kind of like a regular course of events, but for some it indicates that they didn't properly budget, or they increased the state's budget, but the spending is just out of control, and they have to come back and clean things up. Well, Senate Minority Leader John Curran, he sounded off on some of the prospects of a supplemental appropriation when I chatted with him at the Illinois State Fair this week.
Where did I hear that before, Greg? Maybe that was something we mentioned in the budget debate. So that was anticipated then. It's clear as day now that that's going to be coming. So, we will take that matter up. We will probably take the opportunity to remind our colleagues that maybe being a little more transparent up front would be a better approach in the budget process.
What do you think are some of the major drivers of that? Is it the migrant health care subsidies? Is it the union contract? Those were 2 big things that you guys have pointed out that could lead to a bloat in the budget.
Those are going to be, the approach with Medicaid was just lump sum. And so as they're having difficulty managing the not migrant, but the free health care for undocumented immigrants, that strains the rest of the Medicaid budget. So that's going to be a part of it. The AFSCME contract's a part of it. So, it's not surprising.
So we heard from one legislative panel about the taxpayer subsidies for undocumented migrants in Illinois, that they could run out of money in just a handful of months because they only appropriated $550 million, but they're spending like $120 million on this. And that's even after shrinking the program from those over the age of 42 and up to just those over the age of 65 and up. to get taxpayer subsidized health care for those in the country undocumented, and there's no federal matching funds for that. So it's just Illinois tax dollars being used for that. So are they going to have to come back and change that? Are they going to have to come back and put more money in the budget and spend more of your tax dollars on other things? Or maybe just it's a matter of shifting dollars from one place that's not being used to another place that is being used. House Assistant Majority Leader Jay Hoffman, I talked with him as well, and he shared his thoughts on the prospect of a supplemental appropriation, really saying it's just the normal course of things.
Well, I know that as we go through the budgetary year, certain things come up that were unanticipated, and so there's always going to be the need for supplemental appropriations. We do it as a matter of course, and I think it'll probably happen, if not in the veto session, it would happen early in the spring session.
So, again, anticipate it. And that's according to Jay Hoffman, the Assistant Majority Leader for the Illinois Legislature in the Illinois House. We'll be watching all of this as fall veto session comes together and bringing gavel-to-gavel coverage. It's going to be a great event, and we'll break it all down for you and see what happens and what vetoes they override or not, if they come back with trailer bills to advance things, or some of the other measures that could possibly surface, including a supplemental appropriation, or hey, I don't know if there's going to be an effort from State Senator Jason Plummer to bring forward a measure that allows for those who purchased firearms during that 6-day window of a preliminary injunction in place would hold them harmless if the state's gun and magazine ban is ultimately upheld. So yeah, it's a grab bag of things possible going to happen at fall veto session when they come in late October and early November. It is Springfield's Morning News. I'm Greg Bishop on 92.7 WMAY, Springfield's news and